All right, so today we're taking a deep dive into the world of chip manufacturing, specifically TSMC. Their latest earnings report had everyone talking. Shares shot up almost 10% in one day.
Yeah, it was a big jump for sure.
Did you see that coming?
Well, it definitely got people's attention, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It just goes to show you how much excitement there is around TSMC right now. But, a 10% jump is impressive, but we got to look past the surface,
Okay,
right?
to the nitty-gritty.
Exactly. TSMC's net income for the third quarter, are you ready for this? Over 10 billion US dollars.
10 billion with a B, that's a whole lot of zeros. So what's the secret sauce? What's driving these numbers? Did everybody suddenly decide to buy new phones?
Well, smartphones are always in demand, that's for sure, and all those phones need chips. But the thing that really has everyone buzzing, the real engine behind this growth, is the AI boom. TSMC is a major player when it comes to making those advanced chips that power AI applications, and those chips, they're in high demand right now.
Okay, so it's bigger than just our phones now. It's about all those AI applications you keep hearing about. But I gotta be honest, when I think of TSMC, I think of like the chip in my phone, my laptop, that kind of thing. How does AI fit into their business model?
You're right, TSMC is known for those tiny but powerful chips that are in pretty much every electronic device we use. But those same chips, particularly the really advanced ones, the 3nm and 5mm nodes, those are critical for AI too. I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
self-driving cars, the large language models everyone's talking about. All that requires serious processing power. And TSMC is the world leader when it comes to producing these high-end chips, so they're in a prime position to ride this AI wave.
Sounds like they're riding it all the way to the bank. I read that even TSMC's CEO called AI demand the deepest and widest growth they've seen across the entire industry.
He did, yeah. And here's the thing, this isn't just a TSMC story, this is a global trend. Other chip makers like NVIDIA, Micron, AMD, they're all seeing a boost from this AI-driven growth.
So we've established that TSMC is doing incredibly well, and AI is the secret ingredient. Let's unpack those third quarter results a little bit more. We talked about the profit jump, but their revenue also went up significantly, like 36% year on year, if I remember correctly.
You got it. Their revenue hit a staggering 23.5 billion US dollars. And get this, their gross margin for the quarter was a whopping 57.8%.
57.8%, wow. You know, when I hear gross margin, my eyes usually glaze over a little. But you're saying this is a big deal, even for someone like me who doesn't live and breathe finance.
Yeah, it's a big deal.
Break it down for me.
Okay, so that 57.8% basically means that for every dollar TSMC makes in revenue, they get to keep 57.8 cents as pure profit after they've paid for the cost of actually making the chips.
Oh, okay.
So they're making a lot of money, right? But they're also getting better at it, more efficient.
Right.
And there are probably a few reasons for that, like selling more of those high-end chips we were talking about, improving their manufacturing processes, and maybe even having a bit more power to set prices since the demand is so high.
So they're kind of in the driver's seat right now, it sounds like. And speaking of holding all the cards, the report keeps mentioning TSMC's big focus on this 3nm and 5mm technology.
Right.
I know you touched on this earlier, but remind me again why those tiny little numbers are such a big deal in the world of chips.
It's all about transistors, really.
Okay.
So those numbers, the 3nm, the 5mm, they're talking about the size of the transistors on a chip. And when it comes to processors, smaller is better. We're talking nanometers here. A nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. It's unbelievably small.
It's kind of hard to even imagine, honestly.
Yeah, and TSMC is leading the pack in producing these tiny but incredibly powerful chips. And like we were saying, those are essential for AI and really any other application that requires a ton of processing power.
Yeah, it's pretty mind-blowing how they even make something that small. But it sounds like TSMC isn't just focused on winning the technology race. They're making some huge moves in terms of expanding globally as well, right? Like I saw they're putting over $30 billion into capital expenditures this year, including these brand new chip plants in Arizona and Japan.
Yeah.
What's the thinking behind that level of global expansion?
Yeah, 30 billion, that's a massive investment. And it's not just about trying to keep up with demand. This is about positioning themselves strategically for the future.
Well,
By building new plants, especially in these key locations, places like the US and Japan, TSMC can get closer to some of their biggest clients, right?
right.
And it potentially helps them navigate all the geopolitical stuff that's always swirling around.
Yeah, yeah.
And of course, that helps them strengthen their supply chains.
Yeah.
It's a really smart move on a lot of different levels.
It really seems that way. It makes you wonder, though, with all this talk of a global chip race and TSMC expanding so rapidly, is there a risk that maybe they're spreading themselves too thin? I know some of those articles you shared mentioned analysts kind of questioning whether this AI boom can really last. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Anytime you have such explosive growth in a sector, there's always a risk, right? It's important to at least consider that perspective. But here's the thing. TSMC's CEO, he specifically called out the conversations they're having with hyperscaler customers.
Hyperscalers. Now there's a word you don't hear every day. What exactly is a hyperscaler?
Basically, it's a fancy way of saying, like, the giants of the tech world, right? What? Think Google, Amazon, Microsoft.
Got it, the big players.
Exactly. These are the companies that are building those massive data centers, pouring tons of resources into developing their own AI chips, custom designed for their specific needs.
So the fact that TSMC's CEO made a point of mentioning those hyperscalers, that's got to be a pretty strong sign that this whole AI boom isn't just some fad, right?
Yeah, I think it's a pretty clear signal that the demand from those big players, it's not going away anytime soon. They're betting big on AI, and they need TSMC's chips to make it happen.
Okay, so let's zoom out for a second, try to connect all the dots. TSMC is on a roll, their financials are amazing, and AI seems to be like the key ingredient in their recipe for success. So what does this mean for the future? Like if TSMC keeps heading in this direction, getting even bigger and more powerful globally, what kind of impact could that have on how AI develops?
It's a really interesting question. I mean, on the one hand, you could see TSMC's dominance in the market may be leading to less competition in the AI field, right?
Hmm.
Because if fewer and fewer companies control the production of those essential chips, then it's going to be a lot harder for smaller companies or startups to even get into the game.
So it could end up giving even more power to those hyperscalers you were talking about.
It's definitely a possibility, yeah.
That could have some pretty big implications.
Absolutely. But then again, there's also the flip side, right? Maybe as TSMC expands, we'll actually see AI technology becoming more accessible, more affordable over time. Because as they improve their manufacturing process, increase their capacity, the cost of making those advanced chips, it could go down. And that could make it easier, maybe even for smaller companies and researchers to develop and use AI in what they do.
So it's like this double-edged sword. There's the potential for both, like more control in the hands of a few and also making AI more widespread. It all depends on how things shake out. Makes you wonder, if we were to do this again in 5 years, check back in on TSMC, what story would their earnings be telling then? Would we see them completely dominating the market, or would things look totally different? It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely. The chip industry changes so fast, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen. But one thing's for sure, TSMC is in the driver's seat when it comes to shaping the future of AI, which is a pretty amazing position to be in.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive into the world of TSMC, AI, and those little tiny chips that have such a huge impact. I don't know about you, but I feel like I learned a lot about semiconductors today.
Always something new to learn, especially in the tech world.
That's the truth. Well, until next time, thanks for joining us for another deep dive.